Buongiorno, buonasera, buon pomeriggio a tutti, scusatemi. Io sono Tiziano Antognozzi, che bello vedere così tanti di voi e con il panel di oggi inauguriamo le chiacchiere sul trentennale di Magic the Gathering, che spero tutti quanti stiate seguendo, a partire sia da il meraviglioso gruppo di artisti che siamo riusciti a radunare quest'anno a Lucca, ma anche la mostra Palazzo Arnolfini in Piazza del Giglio 3. Per chi non l'avete vista, ho avuto l'onore e l'opportunità di poterla curare con Sam Gaglio, meglio noto come Ristic Studies, e ci sono una serie di cose che, se siete degli appassionati di Magic come me, dovete assolutamente vedere. Ma oggi parleremo d'altro. Oggi ci troviamo qui con, non posso nascondermi, quindi farò direttamente il fanboy, tre dei miei artisti di Magic preferiti di tutti i tempi. Sono davvero contento e orgoglioso di vederli tutti quanti qui. Seb Mckinnon, un applauso. Richard Kane-Ferguson. And Adam Paquette. All over from Canada, the US and Australia. And il ragazzo laggiù invece ci darà una mano con le traduzioni. Raffaele è bravissimo. Facciamo un applauso anche a lui.
Grazie.
Anche se è di Firenze.
Soprattutto.
Per i continenti. Ok. Prima di iniziare vi faccio una domanda di natura pratica che di solito facciamo per quanto riguarda panel che riguardano Magic. Preferite che il panel si faccia tutto in inglese oppure in italiano? Alzate la mano in inglese. Good. Alzate la mano italiani. That's the face of a minority, I guess. Ok. Quindi, Raf, che dici? No, stai magari vicino a loro, così gli traduci le parti un po' più complicate. Che dici? Come preferisci? Sì, facciamo tutto in inglese che è un pochino più comodo anche chiacchierare. So guys, the Italian language section ends here. The crowd allows us to speak directly in English, which can be easier for everybody, especially for me, as I always got complicated questions in my mind and my buddy Adam mocks me about that all the time. Okay, so the topic of today in general is, of course, we want to know a little bit about how these masters achieve their performances and achievement through magic cards, and we want to learn something more about the process. Although, in order to be a little more specific, we decided that we will focus on feelings, on emotions, le emozioni, as these are, at least to me, these three artists that are really, really good at moving the audience through their art. And so we will be finding out some things about the process and the way they intend feelings and the way and the limitations through which they need to translate this into magic cards. Now, first of all, I'd like you to tell something about the process of working with art directors and what happens with a card from the very early idea from the art director until you guys do something about it. Since I'm seeing that marvelous Duck on Black blade, and Rich has been the one who has been working with the game for the most time, I'd be curious if you can tell us a little bit more about how a magic card becomes like that, and what's the relationship with the art director, and so on, with the company.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, actually. It's a wonderful thing these days. You know, the art direction has really been, consistent, and it has been. They've given us a lot of creative freedom to actually, work on these cards. And what's really interesting is, I'm still as excited as I was 30 years ago when a project actually comes across my table. And so it's kind of out of the blue. You'll wake up in the morning, you'll check your email, and it's your art director that you haven't heard from in maybe a month and a half, 2 months, 3 months, whatever. And you're like, okay, we're back on, and you're always interested in what's the card going to be. And they tease you a little bit. You know, like they'll just ask, are you ready to work on another project? And you always email right back and say, yes, I am. What do you have in mind? And then it gets interesting because you get the card assignments. And it's really a thrill sometimes because you'll get that one card or that two cards that you just know you can cut loose on and really do a great job. And it kind of starts from there where you have to do initial sketches, like at first. And that's really the fun part. That's the cutting room floor where, you can cut loose. You can hit them with any idea that you really want. You can just sort of break it down and start to streamline the entire process and kind of synthesize where exactly you want to go with this piece, the coolest angle, the best perspective. What's going to make that card dynamic, interesting, engaging. And so it starts there, and you just start with the sketches, and these guys are great. They will get right back to you, and they'll tell you what they like and what they don't like, what's really working and what might not be working so well. And there's a lot of unison, and normally I know which sketch they're going to go for, I've got a pretty good idea when that one sketch is really dynamic. And it'll start from there, it'll just come down to the best sketch, the best perspective, the best way to work on the painting, and then it gets interesting and you launch right into the painting. But these are quick turnovers, guys. You have to go through the sketch approval process first, and then when you get that green light to paint the painting, it's on. You do not have endless time to actually do these paintings. It's usually very intense, and you have to work flat out for 4 days, 5 days, a week, and you just deliver. You have to move. You have to move very quickly. But it's been really fun, and I'm having a blast right now.
We are having too through your art. we really do. Seb, how does it feel to you, this kind of process? Well, I mean, has it been an happy relationship with your art directors when you've been working in MTG?
Yes. Okay, great. It's working. Yes. I think for me, I had to earn the trust of the art directors at the beginning. I sent my portfolio in years ago, and it was Jeremy Jarvis who gave me a chance. And from there, I started doing cards, and I started getting, just learning the ropes of illustration, because it was kind of the first time I was trying to get into, the freelancing world. And I remember being very stressed at the beginning, but then as the years went on, I started taking more and more risks. And I was very pleased that the art directors were willing. Like you, Richard, you said you have a lot of freedom. Me, at the beginning, I felt I didn't have it. But then once you were able to show them that you could deliver an illustration with the freedom that they gave you, then that was really so much fun. And then after that, I was just like, okay, how far can I push things? How far can I, And then, interestingly enough, when you let artists do that, the art actually ends up being the best. The least restrictions an art director gives, in my opinion, ends up being the best art that an illustrator can make. So it's been really great. It's been really fun. Yeah,
I can tell. Adam, I'd like to show real quick if this works, which usually doesn't. Tecnici, aiuto, non funziona. Ok. No, non funziona. By the way, if you guys... Guarda. Vai.
I can jump in on the last question before we get to the slide.
Yeah, thanks.
Because I wanted to give another shout out to Jeremy. I think that he was... he's working now higher up in the company, but he was an amazing art director, and I think he saw a lot of talent in people that maybe didn't even know that they were ready for working in Magic. And I remember when I met him, I was working for Dungeons & Dragons at the time, and I still have, but I had pretty low skills when it came to character design and anatomy. And I remember meeting him and speaking with him and telling him that I would love to work for Magic, but my characters sucked. And so I probably, have to wait a while and come back in a few years. And he said, no, you know, you could come and do land cards. And at the time, I didn't really think that that was a cool thing to do. You know, it was kind of like land cards are the ones that they give to the guys that have bad anatomy skills. And it was some years before I realized how important the lands were in the game for collectors, for players, and how dear they were to my heart. So yeah, big shout out to him and for helping a lot of young artists through that process.
I'm showing this piece because Adam kindly gave us some of his artworks for the exhibition, and I didn't exhibit this one, and he was pissed off. So we're showing that now. Just a joke. This is like one of those intermediary sketches times of the artwork that we've been discussing, right?
Yeah.
I know that you've been involved pretty frequently in what is usually called the concept push in some sets, right? Like yeah. You are one of the artists who gets, I mean, you can tell it better than me, but when the lore masters and the world builders of the game are working on a new set, on a new plane, and they had to define the visual lexicon of that specific world, they start working already with a few artists. And as far as I understood, you are often involved when it comes to lands, for instance, right?
Right, yeah, I've done, it was actually the first work that I did for Magic before I did cards was the concept push for the original Innistrad set. So after I met Jeremy, he invited me to the offices in Seattle, and I wasn't expecting a job offer at all. And kind of as I was leaving the office, he said, hey, do you want to start some work on a concept push tomorrow? And I was traveling at the time. I'm from Australia, so I was in the States doing a road trip. So I said, what do you mean tomorrow? I'm going to be traveling down the highway in an RV, you know? And he's like, it's fine. You can just do sketches in your sketchbook and send me a photo from your phone. And so that was my introduction to Magic, was really open blue sky concepting, where really the emphasis is not on a beautiful finished product, but on the volume of ideas and the interest of the ideas that you can come up with. So I don't know how many concept pushes I've done since then, maybe 5 or 6. And yeah, it usually involves maybe 5 or 6 artists and about 3 weeks of work. And there is a set of information that we get about an upcoming set that's usually based on developments in the gameplay and kind of an idea of marketing and what people are interested in. And so we have these basic elements to begin forming a world. And it's up to us as the artists to, I guess, in a way, forget about, you know, the marketing and the gameplay and these other things, and really focus on opening up that imaginative field for not only us and for the concepts we're developing, but knowing that then, you know, 100 other artists will be working on that set for months. So you have to provide a lot of ground for them to then also use their imagination on top of. Yeah, and in those concept pushes, I'm usually focusing on setting the tone of the set through landscapes or environments, interiors, this kind of thing. And usually the rest of the team is on characters and creatures and other things.
Okay. Rich, sorry. Rich, I have one question for you. Do you feel that there have been differences in the art briefs and the relationship with art directors, like in the early Legends days and nowadays? Do you feel like things have been shifting throughout these 30 years of Magic the Gathering, or there is something that has been like constant for you into the relationship with art directors, for instance?
I'm sorry, Tiziano, no comment. You know, like,
which is an answer.
You know, like, it's, you know, things change, times change, and, you know, the emphasis of the game sometimes shifts. But one thing that's been remarkably consistent is exactly what Adam is describing, which is that creative impetuous that these guys expect out of us and what we're trying to deliver. It's been remarkably consistent, actually, in that sense. You know, like they want your best work. You know, like they're not trying to trip you up. They are trying to bring out your strengths. You know, like bring out, the qualities they see in your work that they want to push into this project. And they've been remarkably consistent in that, where they give you enough creative freedom and enough support at the company and enthusiasm. It's wonderful when you're dealing with people that are enthusiastic, they're creative, they're wonderful artists. A lot of the art directors are wonderful artists. And that enthusiasm, you know, like really translates to the project that you're working on at the moment.
A few months ago, I had the opportunity, I was writing a small article and I did a very brief calculation. I went on Scryfall and checked how many different illustrations were nowadays for Magic the Gathering, and there are kind of like more than 65,000.
Is there really?
Yeah, that's that amount.
That's the official tally now. Wow.
It's not an official figure. I did just some calculations. Okay. But it could be like that, almost 65,000
My, how the years have passed.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow.
And we calculated that if we were like to exhibit them all in a gallery, it will take 12 times the exhibit capacity of the Pinacoteca di Brera in Milan. So it's like a whole virtual museum that has been developing itself in the way that you've been describing. And I was saying that because I find it so fascinating that somebody like you finds some consistency in what has been happening all along.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I can say that with total honesty.
Just to share a little, then I won't talk that much. On Saturday, we were going to have a super special panel. I advise everybody to be here. Like some of the personnel from the early days of Wizard of the Coast and some of the personnel from Strate Libri will be here to tell us how magic got in Italy at the beginning. Because you know that Italian was the first language in which the game was translated after English. And one of the persons who will be here was the director of the international strategy of the game, Mr. John Jordan. By the way, he just moved in Italy recently. And he's been talking me on like a lot about Mr. Jesper Meerforts, the first art director of the game. And he's been telling me that the whole idea about copywriting straight the artist next to the card in the alpha and beta was his own vision, and he really pushed for it.
He did. Oh, no. Jesper was the ultimate champion of artist rights. He really, and a wonderful art director. He, you know, like, he was so good at assigning cards and actually working with various artists. Yeah.
So, we might owe a little piece of this museum to Mr. Meerforts, perhaps.
For sure.
So, Seb, let's go on another topic. Once again, let me share a little magic story that has been happening this year. There has been the set called March of the Machine recently, where an artist called Jason Rainville did an amazing illustration for the card Storm the Seed Core, if I remember that correctly. I didn't save it, but just look for it, Storm the Seed Core from March of the Machine. And the artist shared a very long post on Twitter, now X, detailing all the process he went through in order to create this masterpiece. And he was really clear and really vocal about the fact that he invested way more time than he was supposed to do in terms of the amount of hours he was actually getting paid. Did it ever happen to you that you was so much invested in something you were doing for a magic card that you kind of forgot everything else and said, I'm not going out of this room until this is done in the way I want it?
So yeah, that happens rarely. When it does happen, it's kind of, you get in a zone, I guess. And that happened on the card Answered Prayers. And I completely lost track of time for a good week. And it was like something else was like taking control, you know? And it was of all the cards, that's the one that really kind of took me out of, but yeah, I forgot everything, and I was just really focused on, making the best illustration I could for that card. Usually, if I'm really passionate about something, that'll happen. Yeah.
And why you do that?
I don't know.
A creative necessity.
Yeah, what? I mean, it's like, why do we do art? It's just it's fun when magic, the commissions line up with what you Answered Prayers is like a painting I would have done just even for myself. You know, so when that opportunity comes up where it's like, oh, well, I would want just even for me alone to work on this painting, and then that opportunity comes up in a magic card, then I think that's what happens. You just really go all out. And yeah, I mean, who knows why we feel the need to make art? You know, that's in a way, like a spiritual question, I guess. You know?
Sure. Sorry for the provocation.
No,
it was
no.
meant to be that.
Yeah.
And it also feels when I'm hearing you that this is a very, I mean, free roaming process. I mean, in the sense, it always almost feels like you are setting your own bar with this.
Yes, yeah. And the process is really, it changes from card to card, but what I've kind of embraced as, I mean, all artists are different with their process, but I really embrace, because I've worked mostly digitally, it's a very chaotic process where I try not to plan anything, and I try to, like, seriously turn off my brain. And if I think too much on something, it just ends up looking horrible and doesn't look good. So it's a weird state to be in where I try to not think at all, and I just work and work and work, and then strangely enough, it's like you kind of snap out of it. It's like, okay, it's good. I can send this in. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to see that. Adam, let me ask you something about the audience. Through this process that we now understood is actually complicated, negotiated, but actually pretty free, okay? Does it ever comes the audience within this process? Like, I mean, does it happen sometimes that, I don't know, a face summons up in your mind like, okay, I need to satisfy this, I need to tell something to this? I mean, or is it like you, like Seb was describing, you are with your own head doing this, or do you have like an audience that you need to satisfy in your room?
Yeah, I think that there can be a few different audiences. There is the audience that I am employed to entertain with my work, and that's an explicit agreement as part of being a part of this game, right? That it is part of my job and why I'm being paid to provide a service in the form of art to people that love Magic the Gathering. But that is not the audience that's typically in my head when I work. And it's not because it's not the audience that I care about, but it's not the audience that if I focus on that audience, it doesn't produce the best work. The best work that I produce is when the audience in my head is either myself or artists that I admire from history. And that question of, what would Rembrandt think of this if he was looking over my shoulder, that's much more likely to lead me to more interesting and risky choices to impress him than, is someone at a Magic event going to like this? Because the answers to those questions are coming from outside of Magic. And so within the world of Magic, because I've been working on it for a decade and a half, and I've done 380 paintings, so I know that world so well, and I know what to expect in that world. And so for me, there's not a lot of surprises that come back to me from that world. It's kind of like a director watching their own movie. They kind of see behind the curtain, and it's very hard for them to surprise themselves with their own work. So, when we talk about putting feelings into our work, I don't see it like I have a feeling and I've decided I want to put that inside the painting and kind of give it to other people. I see that relationship with the painting as a receptive thing, where I begin with the brief and I begin with what I kind of instantly assume should be the solution to that problem, and I start sketching that out, and then I listen and I wait for something to come back. And so I'm more interested in using that frame of the painting that I'm working on as a kind of window that I'm shifting around this world until I notice something interesting, and maybe I notice something interesting kind of emerging from the background of this world that's saying I kind of want to be in the foreground. And why is usually because it's bringing in an idea of something interesting that's not typically in the world of Magic. And so there's that artist voice in the back of my head that's saying, put that in as well, and use Magic not as as just a kind of echo chamber that you kind of know what to expect inside, but it's an opening onto, through that world, back into our world and the interesting things that I've experienced and that I've seen. Is that a confusing answer to a simple
No, it's an amazing answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Yeah.
Of course, I've been thinking on at least a few times we've been talking about this, and I was going to recall something.
Now it's your head behind me when I paint.
Yeah, indeed. Right, indeed. I mean, let's stay on the topic, but let me ask you a lateral question about this. In this process, this audience, is it ever a gaming audience, or is it like the MTG audience? I mean, the gaming element, when you are trying to convey feelings through this card, is ever there, or is like a gray area situation more?
For me personally, I've never been a big player of Magic. I don't come to this world through the gaming side, and someone like Jesper who does, you know, and he comes to an event like this and he wants to sneak away from the artist booth and go play Magic, you know, and that's not how I came to it. I came to it through an admiration of the artists who were working for Magic. So no, that is not usually the audience in my head, except in the sense that. So if I kind of shift into when I'm not making Magic and I'm an artist, and I'm painting for myself or I'm painting for a gallery, what isn't in that world is the game thing, right? So as an artist, I suddenly have this interesting set of variables that shift the way that I would normally make choices about a painting. And so I can kind of go down my normal way of making a painting, and then something from my knowledge of the game and what this card should be says, you shouldn't go that way, or you need to emphasize this more because it's a mechanical thing in the game, right? And so that's an interesting friction that can then send me in new directions for the painting. But I'm actually quite against knowing what the illustration should be at the end while I'm working on it. I want to keep it alive and open for as long as possible. So I may get a flash of you know, what should this be? What do the art directors expect it to be? What do the players expect it to be? But insofar as I can, I try to work against that and shift it in another direction to keep it, I don't know how to put it other than to keep it alive, you know? If you already know where that painting's going and then it's just, you know, you do the sketch, you've solved everything, and then it's 50 hours of sitting there rendering, I'm not the kind of painter that enjoys that process. I need it to be risky and uncertain until as late as possible so that I can stay engaged with it. And there is usually that thing that I'm inquiring for and looking for, and I'm trying to look through that window into that world and bring something out. It quite often is at the end of the process, not at the beginning. You know, it's something that maybe was there in the sketch in the background, and then, you know, right at the end I bring it forward. Yeah.
Rich, were you saying something? I mean, do you have a...
absolutely, like you know, what we're touching on here is you don't know how a painting is going to end up. If you do, it's formulaic. You've done it a million times. If you're working on a piece, that you know exactly what's going to happen from point A to point B. It is exactly what Adam just described. It is fucking boring as hell. You know, like you're just like running through the paces. And you know you're just trying to make the deadline. And, you know, it's never the way to work. You know, it's a meditative state. You know, like ideally, you're putting so much time into the piece, you are sleeping and dreaming that piece. You know, like you'll be problem solving in your dreams. You know you're like on the right track when your mind is completely engaged in these projects. And that's ideally what you're shooting for. You know, like you want it to be a meditative state. Because that's where the ideas, that's where the fluidity, that's where the power, and flow of a painting actually comes from. You know, like when you're just there, and you know, like Seb was saying earlier, you know, like you're not always thinking about everything. You're completely immersed in it, and it's not. I mean, we love you guys, but you know, like I never work on a painting where I'm thinking about the audience. You know, like it's the concept, it's the idea, it's the mythology behind it that I'm trying to convey. You know, it's something that, you know, like I want to see happen, you know, like ideally. You know, it's a piece that I want to see manifest itself. So, you know, it's certainly part intellect, but it is absolutely everything Adam and Seb were just describing, actually. You know, that's what you're searching for. And that's what truly keeps you engaged in the work and excited for the next piece.
Do you really dream about the painting you're doing?
Totally. I mean, by the time I get to day 4 or 5, you know, like most of my night is problem solving a painting. You know, like I'll just wake up and like, man, you know, like nope, you're down the wrong rabbit hole. This is how you synthesize these processes to achieve that, like that visual element that you're trying to hit. Yeah, I do it all the time, actually, all the time.
The microphone.
Oh, all the time, guys. I mean, yeah, you know, you've got to try to remain passionate.
Somebody can tell. So in the end, it's a way more stratified. I mean, as far as I understood, the process is so stratified that you don't have time to think about anything else.
You do, obviously. You know, I mean, you can't ignore the kids completely. Never ignore your wife. Don't ignore your wife. You know, very bad. Even if you're thinking about the painting, just yeah, I'll do that, absolutely. You're right. We've got to pay that bill now. And then you're back to thinking about, whatever you're working on. But, while you're there, you're there. That's the thing. And you have to learn how to work around distractions. Life is distracting. Everybody's got something going on. Everybody's got friends that are, having a really rough time sometimes, and you're doing your thing, and you're like, well, I don't quite have the time, but that's life. I mean, problems arise, things blow up, and, you just keep working, and it's a matter of actually putting yourself into that mindset where you can engage in real life, obviously, because we all have lives, but ideally, you're also thinking about what you're working on, even in those kind of situations. And you got to get good at it, because if you can't, and you're constantly being ruled by your emotions or what's happening, these projects will not happen. You will not get the work done.
I'm thinking about painting right now. I'm looking at your face, but I'm thinking about painting right now.
Rich carefully does that. Yeah. When you don't see him, he sketches you. And he sells that on eBay. No, he doesn't. So, Seb, let's go somewhere else. I'm been always extremely curious about the sources of your work. Let's take this piece, for an instance, okay? Somebody must have seen this on a playmat somewhere. I don't know if it happened for some of you. I mean, this, the first time I got in contact with your art, not with your heart, sorry, with your, you did with mine. This was like totally a nightmare. So, I mean, you will fall under the category of people like Rich who will dream stuff and paint them. But you can also see here something that tells us that you are some sort of educated artist. Because this is like an acknowledged painting. Like there's somebody who has been doing this before you. So I had like this idea that in your head, like these twisted nightmares clashes with your memories and the stuff you've been like stricken about, maybe when you were walking in a museum, for instance.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is clearly Bosch, inspired. Like,
thank you for failing my attempts at circumnavigating this.
And now I'm told also a lot of like Berserk, the manga, like people keep telling me, oh, it's like that scene from The Eclipse, and so I think I have to read that manga now. But I also, yeah, so this is just clearly Bosch. He's always been an artist that inspired me a lot from a very young age. I even had his I remember going like when I must have been like 10 or 12 years old, and there was an exhibition in Montreal, and at the gift shop, I just bought all the little like creatures from they had like the sculptures. And so this is what I want to do with that painting. I didn't know I want to do it at the sketch phase this way. Again, I always try to approach it very with no brain, with no mind, you know, and I just move pixels around on the digital canvas until something appears. And then that's where the ideas come from, oddly enough. So like, you know, the horses battling, like one skeleton version, like just like the shape. If you know, like when you squint your eyes, or if you look at clouds and you see shapes in the clouds, that's like kind of the way I work, you know? And then, okay, like that looks like a horse, so let me just, you know.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's revealed in the paint, you know.
That's it. No,
that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, and then once that like process happens, then I go and I try to draw from, you know, suddenly an intention starts to form through that chaotic process, and that's where Bosch came in. And I also want to pay homage to Kev Walker, you know, with the original, you know, black. So that's what you see there. It's the black, as if, imagine you went into that black hole. This is what you would see on the other side kind of concept, you know? But yeah, that's what it is. And this was a painting I had a lot of fun with. It was a lot of, you know, details and stuff like that. But it was also fun because this was like the artist series painting, you know, and that was such a huge honor for me to do. Yeah. And I was able to tell a story through the four paintings, you know. So, yeah. But clearly, Bosch. Yeah, it's all there. Yeah.
Yes, Pentarino. Okay. You said something which is interesting to me after working on the exhibition. In the exhibition, we have one of your artworks, like a sketch, is owned by an Italian collector. So
oh, really? Oh, yeah. What sketch is it?
This is what I was going to tell. Officially, I know that through the sale, the artwork was enlisted like the sketch for right for bells and lock.
Oh, yes.
But
yes.
you did 2 sketches of that, and I know that when you were working on those, you didn't know actually in which card it will end, and they're both projectual for 2 different artworks, not just for Rite of Bells and Lock.
No,
right?
that's it. Yeah, well, I was told that the 2 cards would be related, I believe, and that was an interesting art brief because I think it was Winters that was the art director, and he wanted a depiction of a song, you know? So he wanted, like, you're doing these 2 artworks together, Dirge of Dread and then Rite of Bells and Lock, and it needs to feel like music. And so that's where I think you're talking about, like, the skeletons singing. That's the sketch.
Sorry, I don't have the image, but maybe Google it. Rite of Bells and Lock. Yeah. It's a saga from Dominaria,
yes.
I believe, right?
Yeah. And so that's where that came from. So, yeah.
Very cool. Go and watch it. Adam, talking about sources, you deal mostly with landscapes.
Yes.
Okay. Where do you find these landscapes? Like this, for instance, which is pretty good to me.
It's a lovely place.
I mean, what's an interesting way to answer that question? I think I've traveled a lot, so there is a library in my head of places that I've been. But I think there are a lot of concept artists that, or illustrators that when they travel or when they're doing research, they focus on the object, you know? And so there's this kind of fascination. Let's take Japan, for example. You travel to Japan and you're interested in the typography or the food, or there are all of these things that you can kind of fill your sketchbook with interesting visual information that you're not familiar with. Yes, I do that as well. But I think what stays with me the most from places that I've been are atmospheres. And those atmospheres may be constructed through objects, through interesting, again, to use Japan as an example, through interesting materials in the architecture, right? So to actually see buildings that have, you know, fabric or paper windows and wooden structure, and there's that kind of transparency of what's normally a heavy structure. It's actually very light and open. Or in the case of a city like Tokyo, the feeling that's created by so much artificial light in a space where you can't see the horizon. And so it's a very different kind of atmospheric perspective than looking out at an ocean or a mountainscape, you know? And so I think, yeah, what has stayed with me about landscapes, which, you know, when I was young, I did spend a lot of time in nature. And the things that I remember are not the panoramic view from the top of the mountain at the end of the hike. It's the kind of weird little corners and staircases and places that you find along that path. And if you ask me to put into words, you know, what was that thing you found there? It's like, it was a tree and it kind of on like a weird rock and, you know, like there's not a lot that you can say about it. But if you put that in a painting and you convey that same embodied feeling that you had when you were there, like how did I feel in that moment? Did I feel kind of claustrophobic, or did I feel almost like I was floating, or did I feel like I was really close to that object or very separate from it? Like all of these questions, that's where the environment comes from. So when I begin a sketch, it's not, I don't use a lot of line, I don't think about the objects I'm putting, I think about space, space created by large volumes. So, you know, am I standing somewhere and there's a big open empty area and then there's a thing far away? Or am I standing with something that's kind of right in front of my face? And so I begin with those sensations and feelings, and I kind of roughly block that thing out, and then I decide what should that object be, what should that object be.
So that's how you convey feelings, through actual feelings.
Yes.
That you stored
Surprise.
in the ordinary life.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
That's fascinating.
You know, it's so strange, actually. You know, certain, you know, like things that you've done, certain places you've been, you know, like some just disappear, you know, like right out of your mind. And some are so memorable that you can access that memory, you know, like years and years later. And especially formulative memories, you know, like when you were in your early teens and a teenager and like 20 years old and 25 years old. You know, you're very, everything is coming at you so quick and you're so in the moment that like certain places you've been, certain things you've done just stick with you forever. And you can access those emotions and that time and place, you know, like years and years later.
And I would also say, I just wanted to say something like looking at this painting here. Working with landscapes is really, you paint what you want to explore, right? Like there's always this feeling when I'm painting of, I kind of want to move from where I'm sitting into this painting. And if you look at the history of Western painting from the Renaissance and that invention of linear perspective, you know, with the vanishing point and the lines that are converging to this vanishing point, that was a mathematical tool that was invented for that purpose. It actually was invented to help people enter through the frame of the picture to have this religious experience, this connection with the divine or whatever. And so when you build a painting for magic or for anything that uses that kind of history of perspective, it's that same tool. It's actually a tool for you to kind of fly into the image. And it works not just when you look at the finished image, but also when you're painting it. So if I get that feeling of like being sucked into it, then I know I'm on the right direction, you know? And if I kind of start to feel like I want to look somewhere else, something is wrong.
That's fascinating. Okay. I have one question for Rich. Then we play a little game. I will show you. I've been wondering, these are like feelings coming from you then to encrypt in one illustration. Then like this thing becomes legendary. You clearly recognize it, right? I mean, it's not because the set is legend, but because, I mean, even like you've been doing like pictures of yourself, like acting like Deccan Blackblade, right? It's like encrypted. And it feels like these feelings are now projected on the outside. You see this thing in the decks of all the Magic players. They want the cards to be signed. You have playmats. Like now it has its own life, it seems. How does it feel to create an actual iconic legend like that?
You're not aware when you're doing it. You know, that's the funny thing. When I was working on that project, I knew I had something. You know, when I finished the piece, I was like, okay, great, but I had to paint 10 legends. And so, you know, like, it was immediately, how do I approach Nebuchadnezzar? How do I, you know, paint Ramses, Lady of the Mountain? So it's so strange because, you know, like, and you don't know at the time. That was pre-internet. You had no clue. I had no clue these characters, you know, like, actually hit that chord they did until I did Gen Con in like 1994. And I go to Gen Con, and all of a sudden I see this huge poster of Silicon Art and like Dacon that some guy had printed up, and I'm like, whoa, you know, we just stepped into like some very interesting territory. But it just happens fast. I knew I liked it when I finished, but you're never sure how your audience is going to respond, you know?
Never. It's one of the weirdest things about working as a painter.
Pieces you
like,
thought.
you have no idea which ones that people are going to like. And you finish a painting and you're like, this is the one. Like, people are going to go crazy for this. And you're like, straight past it. No interest, none, zero. It's weird. Like, you would think after 15 years you would figure out what works. But
you don't.
When there's no audience behind your head, nope.
I see. Okay, let's try to close up our little chat here. We understood that you feel 360 an artist all the time during this whole process of like creating magic cards. Yet, I'd like to ask you to tell us something about a work or, an artwork or a project that you are doing outside of the MTG. Like, for instance, with Seb, I'd like to start with something actually pretty it's visual art, but not painting, okay? Like, Seb, is the same artist who has been doing Damnation, the one who has been working on the Kim Fables, and please,
yes.
Maybe not everybody's familiar with what you're doing.
Yeah, so, I mean, filmmaking has been a dream of mine, since I was a kid. And so I started this project called Kane-Fables, which is, if you want to be a filmmaker, you start with making shorts. So this was me making these short films and kind of developing a world. It's strange because that project started the same way I started painting, not really knowing where it's going and having characters and, just appear in your subconscious, and then you just roll with it. And working on music as well, because I do the short films and I do all the music for my films too. And so the play of music and film, and then also being able to draw the scenes. Like if you're trying to communicate a vision to your filmmaking crew, I have that. It's like Ridley Scott. Like, Ridley Scott can sketch, and and that's so useful, and it's really great. So yes, this is my project I'm working on the side, and I just want to say. It's really cool when you look at your life, like going back, and I didn't, when you have a big dream making a film or become a film director, it seems very inaccessible. And I'm here, being an illustrator, being like, okay, how am I gonna, I thought I would, get into that world through, like concept art, like I was looking at the behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings and seeing the artist's work. I was like, that's how I'm gonna go make my films, I'm gonna do that. But then to work on magic, get that privilege, because it's a great privilege to be able to work for magic, and then to kind of work for. I've been doing this since like 2012, and so to build up, what's beautiful too is that there's a wonderful fan base with the game, and so to kind of. Present your personal project, and I did these Kickstarters, and I just want to say I'm so thankful to the magic community, because the film that I'm working on now, which is the culmination of these shorts that you see, is entirely funded by Magic the Gathering fans. So it's quite something incredible, and I just want to say thank you all. I don't know if any of you have donated to the campaign, but it's pretty crazy, and it's a great privilege, and I'm making a fantasy film funded by people who love fantasy, so that's kind of amazing. So yeah,
sure.
Thank you.
And good luck with that. We of course cannot wait to watch it. Adam, what is this? Is it a magic card? It's a secret lair in my damn apartment. What's it called?
So this kind of goes back to what I was saying before about wanting to keep paintings alive and not wanting to know where they're going. So I've always done a lot of sketching in public and, you know, in cafes, on the train, that kind of thing. And I really enjoy working spontaneously. And so when you're drawing someone in a cafe, they're moving, right? I'm not going to people and saying, hey, can you hold still for 20 minutes while I do a life drawing? So someone's, you know, drinking their coffee and you're trying to kind of, you know, draw them as quickly as you can. And then in 2016, I moved to Berlin. And I'd never really gone out much, partying or you know, concerts, yes, but I wasn't really a going out to a bar kind of person. And in Berlin, I discovered this amazing world of music, electronic music, jazz. There was so much stuff happening. And so I started to go out and really enjoy this environment. And when I would go out to nightclubs, I would take my sketchbook and I started to draw people on the dance floor. And a dance floor in a nightclub in Berlin is dark, there's strobe light, people are sweating, it's complete chaos, definitely no one is staying still. And so there was this really exhilarating period where I was doing these drawings on the dance floor, you know, and I could barely see my book. I had to use a colored pen so I could see in the dark and all of this kind of thing. And I realized that drawing in that kind of environment, which is like the opposite of the environment that most artists would want to be in when they're making their work so they can focus and concentrate and they have all of their materials, it really, my mind couldn't keep up with the process. So my brain couldn't jump in and say, no, like that's not how an elbow should look. And it felt completely free and liberating to just be in that moment of drawing for hours. And so with my partner, this is my girlfriend, Orsi, and we started a project together called Collective Shaping. And she's a yoga teacher and a pranayama teacher and used to be a dancer. And so she moves. So she does a few hours of practice. We don't talk. She's moving quite fast. And I have big sheets of paper and ink and sometimes paint like this one. And I just paint and I just draw. And I don't think about the image that I'm producing. You know, it's kind of like 3-minute drawing, throw it away, 3-minute drawing, throw it away. And we just build up this body of work. And the point of it is not to create, you know, a beautiful painting or even an exhibition or anything like that. It's just I want to stay in that experience longer. You know, if we can get up every day and do 3 hours of that kind of practice, it feels like every second of that time is the best part of being a painter. And there's no, okay, now I just have to finish it. It's just constantly responding to feelings and real things happening in the world. So that's what we do. And we exhibit and make installations and go to festivals and perform. And
honestly, I mean, you just shared these with me. I didn't know the process. It's really fascinating. Yeah. Thank you. Sì, applauso, vai, come no. Assolutamente. So let's close the circle. Please, Rich, what is this?
Actually, that's a personal piece right here. The musician. The eternal archetype, and it was totally intuitively painted. Funny story with that painting, actually. You know, I used to be a night owl. In the early days of magic, I was a total night owl, right? You know, like I'd spend the day. You know, like I'd start painting usually around 3 or 4 o'clock. You know, in the afternoon. But with this particular piece, I was working on, you know, like actually, I think I was working on Fallen Empires at the time, right? And I worked till about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, okay, you know, like I'd been working for days. I was like, take a break. And I used to sleep in shifts back then, where like I wouldn't sleep the entire night. I'd just lay down for a couple hours, you know, get up, do it again. And I lay down. I couldn't fall back asleep. And I just said, you know what, just get up and do a personal piece. Just, you know, like, you know, just right now, right this second. It was like 3:30 in the morning. And I just started working on the piece. It was very intuitive, very fluid. And I painted that painting, I think, in 6.5, 7 hours. And it was just flat out. It was all wet-on-wet techniques. And sometimes, you know, that's really kind of where the work comes from. And it was a release at the time. Because, you know, you do, you know, like you're working on commercial projects. And, you know, there's pressure there. There's always a little bit of pressure. I like it. I enjoy, you know, the heat. I like the excitement of a deadline. But there's pressure. And so it was really a release to just paint that.
Interesting
Wow.
that all three
Yeah.
of us also mentioned music in
Right.
response
I was
to that.
thinking about exactly about that.
It could be the most perfect art form. I mean, there's something about playing guitar where, like it's just flows. It comes, you know, like it comes out of nowhere. And when you're playing with the right guys, it's really cool. As you get, I'm sure a few guys know.
I think these, you know, these feelings that we're talking about, these things that happen in painting, in the good ones, in the ones that we love, hopefully in the ones that other people love, they are the things like the atmosphere or like the movement that you can't put into words. Yeah. And the paintings and the illustrations that I'm not so interested in are the ones where, you know, I kind of look at it and everything that's happening in the painting I can put into words. You know, this is this character, he is doing this to this other character in this world, and it's like everything is explainable. And the paintings that you look at, and, you know, I look at this and it's like, yeah, there's, you know, someone that's playing a flute, but that's like 1% of what's going on in there. And the rest of that stuff, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know, like, I can call it beautiful. I can say it reminds me of such and such a thing, but most of what's happening in there is the not verbal stuff. And that's what painting is for. If you can say it, write a book, write a tweet. Right. If you can't say it, make a painting or make music. And I think as painters, music connects us to that world where there really are no, not lyrics obviously, but the music itself, there are no words there. And so it reminds painters that paint like that, you know, paint like music, paint in a way that can't be explained.
Well, guys, this has been an amazing chat. I hope everybody had fun, and I really wanted to share this. While me and Sam, we've been working on the exhibition, like the task of compressing 30 years of 65,000 on, it has been daunting.
If you stacked them all together, they'd probably touch a Musk satellite.
Most likely, yeah.
That's, you know.
And we've been thinking quite often about the fact that for us, for Magic players and Magic fans, this game has been a gateway to so many things, an access gate to friends, to like gaming activities, to collecting, to so many things, to appreciating art. And I feel that after this chat, I knew that already, but I feel like it is reinforced. It's also a gateway to human feelings. And this is probably, to me, the most important things, that these magic cards make actual magic, and you make this real through your humanity, through embedding actual feelings within this. And I find it amazing, and thank you so much for being like this. Thank you, for real.
Thank you. I guess we don't have time for questions, right?
We do one question.
Okay. I mean, also, if anyone has questions, if the next talk needs to happen, we can be over here, or I can be over here for 5 minutes if anyone has any questions. So.
The quickest question. 3, 2, 1.
On the painting of damnation. On the painting of damnation, it's pretty grim, hellish. But there is a sprite, angel, fairy on the right side. It has a particular meaning, or is just something that happened to?
Well, that one is yes. So it's part of the story I was telling, you know. And it's, I think with these pieces, it's weird. Like Stasis was there for a second too, but the part of my film is leaking into magic, you know. So that's the thing. That's what I find very funny. Yeah, you know. So, but this is that. So that figure there is part of a story. You know, that if you look at all the cards, place them, it tells a story. So it starts with the swamp, right? Because it's part of the artist series. So the knight's traveling through the swamp. He meets the fairy character in Sower of Temptation. And then the fairy shows him all the sins he's committed in his life, and that's what damnation is. And then it ends with, and so she's like overlooking his own torment, and then it ends with the rebirth in the last card of Enchanted Evening. Yeah, or he's reborn as the tree in the water. Yeah. So that's what that is. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Seb. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time. 3, 2, 1, no more time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Seb. Thank you, Rich.
Guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. Thank you.